Hello everyone, it's me, Clayton. I just got back from watching Jumanji: The Next Level, once again starring Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, Karen Gillan, Jack Black, and now also starring Awkwafina, Danny Glover, and Danny DeVito. So, the first Jumanji, or I should say the Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, back 2 years ago, was definitely a surprise, considering that it looked like the reboot that nobody wanted that ended up being one of Sony's better films in the past few years. So, the sequel, shot 2 years later, definitely manages to retain a lot of what we loved about the original Jumanji, but also added a few more elements to keep it enjoyable enough for those who wanted a sequel to try new things. It does try enough new things. So let's get to the story, shall we? The story is that Spencer and his friends are now in college, and Spencer is still feeling insecure about himself and how amazing he was when he was Dr. Smolder Bravestone back in the Jumanji game. So he fixes the Jumanji game and goes back into it when his friends, who were expecting him for a reunion, decide to go back into the game to save him. Unfortunately, they end up bringing along his grandpa Eddie, played by Danny DeVito, and his friend Milo Walker, played by Danny Glover. So they gotta teach these two old dudes how to play the game while they end up in different avatars than they were before. Except for Martha, because you gotta have her as Karen Gillan for. So the story itself does feel in some ways like a retread of the first film, where our characters need to get used to their avatars' skills. They need to learn to work together. Two characters, or most of them, don't get along very well. But it's done in a clever way. For example, none of the characters feel like they've gone against their pre-established character development. Fridge, Martha, Bethany, and Spencer feel like they have taken what they learned last time and they apply it to this game. It's mostly Grandpa Eddie and Milo who need to be assisted. Mainly because Grandpa Eddie is a bit of a stubborn curmudgeon who has a bit of a checkered past with Milo, and Milo doesn't really know when to shut up. Granted, it's Danny Glover, so I love hearing him talk, but he really doesn't know when to wrap things up and get to the point. It leads to a lot of really great jokes, especially considering that Kevin Hart gets to essentially put on a Danny Glover impression for a good portion of the film. And it's why I like his performance more here, considering that Kevin Hart just played the same character that he always does in the other movie, and here he actually gets to play against type. The Rock gets to play against type too, and I think in a more hilarious way than the first film, considering that it's The Rock playing Danny DeVito, which is just surreal to me. And the whole film's full of combinations like that in other ways. Like Fridge gets to be Shelley Oberon, and Jack Black gets to put on a different impression, which is just as funny as when he was Bethany in the first film. And there are even some new gameplay mechanics that do spice things up, such as a few new characters who are added to the roster. You got Jefferson C. playing McDonough, played by Nick Jonas again, of course, but you've also got Ming Fleetfoot, played by Awkwafina, who's the thief character, and Awkwafina is really hilarious whenever she gets to have a scene with herself. And there's even a black horse named Cyclone. And yes, Cyclone happens to be another one of the characters. And let's just say that I didn't expect as much personality out of a horse than what this movie provided. Unfortunately, there are some negatives when it comes to this movie. It does feel like it's going a little slower than usual. On one hand, I like that the slower pace allows us to get to know these characters a little more outside of their archetypes, but it can feel like it's taking a long time to get to the Jumanji action that we love these movies for. Also, the villain of the film, much like Van Pelt in the first one, is not particularly memorable. He works good as an obstacle for the main characters, but that he doesn't act as much else, and the way the characters eventually beat him is kind of a weak sauce weakness. I won't spoil it, but you'll know it when you see it. Last thing that I'll say is that while there is a lot of repeating, there's enough new elements to add spice to things. Like, some characters even get new skills that weren't there in the first film, or new weaknesses that they didn't have before. So the characters get to have enough variety in order to keep things spiced up. It's not the best sequel in the world, but for another Jumanji film, I definitely think it's worth the watch if you loved Welcome to the Jungle. Especially considering that there's an after-credits scene that sets up another Jumanji movie. So if they make a trilogy out of this, I say sign me up for the threequel. I give Jumanji: The Next Level a 7.5 out of 10. See you next time.